I'm going to give it another minute and we'll get going right at 8 o'clock. Okay, hello and welcome everyone. Today we have an exciting panel of our evaluation champions from our most recent district conference evaluation contest. And to go ahead and introduce them, what I'm going to do is give them each kind of a question to start us off, and that way they can give us a little bit of history about them. But before I do that, I just wanted to say, and I've said this a lot recently, and especially to our panelists, they're very aware of this as well, that a lot of times people will come to our club meetings and they'll hear a great speech and they'll be entertained and they'll be excited about Toastmasters. But when somebody comes to a club meeting and they hear an amazing evaluation, that's when they join. Because the difference is a great speaker will entertain somebody, a great evaluator will show them that they can become a great speaker. And a lot of times that's really why we're in Toastmasters, is we also want to be great speakers. So let's go ahead. I'm going to kick a question to our panelists here. Could you tell us what brought you to Toastmasters? Well, first of all, what's your name? What brought you to Toastmasters? Why did you join? And then what has been your journey in Toastmasters to this point, and what roles are you doing now? So we'll start with Beth.
Thanks, John. I joined Toastmasters in 2013. I don't think I had ever heard of it before then. And to this day, I believe that Toastmasters is the world's best kept secret. You said say our name, Beth May. And what brought me to Toastmasters is that I worked at Lockheed Martin and I joined a leadership association. I don't remember it might have been LMA or something like that. It was like the acronym was for managers, but the intent was for leaders. And they had a special. If you had joined, or if you do join that association, you get a free 6-month membership to Toastmasters. So I said, oh, well, let me check this out. It's free. So I attended a meeting as a guest. I got the best table topic speaker ribbon at my first meeting as a guest, which was kind of a confidence boost. And I really enjoyed the structure and the other people. So I joined that club. That was the Sky High Toastmasters Club at Lockheed Martin 12 years ago. And when I left Lockheed Martin 2 years later, I needed to find a new club. And so I checked out 4 different clubs and I felt like Goldilocks. One was too small, one was too big. 2 of them were just right from a size perspective. But Frederick Toastmasters was the best for a number of reasons. And I will tell you that I lived the experience that John just mentioned during his intro. I went as a guest to Frederick Toastmasters and I heard an evaluation which was given at the time by Anna Lee Weber, if anyone remembers her, and it blew me away and I knew I'd be able to learn a lot from her. So that was one of the major contributing factors for why I decided to join Frederick Toastmasters over the other 3 clubs that I had visited. And that's been my home club ever since. I also am a founding member of another level online advanced, Aloha, which we started in 2021. And my current role is managing newsletter editor for the district and webmaster for my club. And this year I've been the lead for club officer training for VPPRs.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Beth. We'll move to our next person, LaTaunya Howard. If you could answer our question for us.
Sure. Well, first of all, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining in, and thank you, John, for assembling this panel. My name again is LaTaunya Howard, and I am a member of Crofton Professional Toastmasters. I joined in October of last year, so just shy of 8 months I've been a member of Toastmasters. And my reason for joining is so that I can become a better speaker. I knew already before joining the mechanics of speaking, but I wanted to become more confident on stage, improve my stage presence and my style of speaking because I want to one day become a professional speaker as another line of business that I have. What drew me to Toastmasters is I had heard of it kind of peripherally over the years, just in passing, but I became more interested in it as when I was a member of another professional group, not a Toastmasters group, but that particular group talked about Toastmasters all the time as maybe a complementary type of group to be a part of. So after I ended my membership with that other group, I thought I would pursue Toastmasters to, see what they were talking about. And they really undersold Toastmasters. It's really been a pleasant experience. And similar to Beth, and as I was saying before we started, I visited the club the week before the October that I joined. And the club just has very high energy. But during that meeting, I just heard really exceptional evaluations. And I was really fascinated by the fact that evaluations were are a structured part of the Toastmasters experience because other professional organizations don't necessarily have that as a central tenet of the Toastmasters or the organizational experience. So it's been a really wonderful journey. It's probably been the best 8 months that I've ever had any type of experience in terms of just what I've learned in such a short period of time. Currently, I'm not in any club officer roles, but I do actively participate in the meetings and the meeting roles and so forth. So I'm just excited to learn and to learn from everyone here today as well.
Fantastic. Yes, thank you for sharing. Thank you for being here. Our third panelist is Maureen Shanks. Maureen, if you could answer our question for us.
For sure. Thanks, John. Thanks, everyone, for having me. I am Maureen Shanks. I am a member of the Columbia Club. I found my way to Toastmasters actually back in 2015. I had to look it up in a corporate club that was in person in the Gaithersburg area. That went on for about 5 years until COVID, and we all went home. And then the company had a couple of clubs at different sites. We merged up into a virtual club called BioToasters, which kept going until October of 2024. And so that club wound down in October for a number of reasons. And I found my way to Columbia Club, which is a local club and open, and it's a very different environment than a corporate club. And I love it. It's great. Really supportive. I had joined back in 2015 for two reasons. One, I was 3 years off defending my dissertation. Even now, 13 years later, I remember that feeling of being so nervous leading up to and giving that 45-minute presentation. And then I wanted to get better at impromptu speaking and not freezing when I was asked a question in a meeting. The feedback element and being able to both receive and give evaluations and feedback was an added bonus that I was not aware of. I'm very pleased to have found in the program. Over the years, I've served as secretary, vice president of education, and president for the last club. And I'm really happy to be a member of Columbia Club.
Fantastic. Well, again, thank you, all three of you, for being here. I'm going to move into some of our questions now to help our audience. One of the biggest questions is, how do you actually learn to give an evaluation? So what was your process? How did you get better at doing this? And I'll let you kind of decide if you have something you want to jump right in. Well, just go ahead.
I'll start. For me, it started with the basics for me. As I mentioned, I joined in October of last year, and I really dove in to pathways and everything that I could just begin to absorb. And I'll say quite honestly, a lot of the basics that I learned about evaluations came from pathways because they talk about things like body language and gestures and all of these other types of things that not only make you a great speaker, but things that you can look out for when you're evaluating other people. And I also looked at some videos. Some of them I saw through Toastmasters on the Toastmasters YouTube channel, and then also other districts that post their speaking engagements and contests. I took cues from them and how they may have structured their speech or the types of approaches that they took to their evaluation. Now, I will say that the way I approach an evaluation in the club is different than the way I approach it in the contest. Of course, in the contest, you're trying to get a trophy. No, I'm just in a contest, obviously you have a shorter period of time and the energy and the focus is different. But with the with the club evaluation, what I like for that version versus the contest is that you get to really look at the journey that the speaker has taken. When you're doing evaluations in a club, probably you've seen a speaker that you're evaluating give other speeches, and you can really point to how they've improved, things that you've noticed that they have developed a mastery around. So I think it could be more customized and personalized at the club level. The contest, on the other hand, really challenges you to think very quickly, and that's where I go back to really understanding those basics and foundational things that are covered in Pathways and other Toastmasters resources.
Fantastic, fantastic. Maureen or Beth?
Sure. Similarly to LaTaunya, by doing it, first and foremost, by doing it at club meetings, by evaluating at club meetings, and the more you do it, the better you get at it. And you get feedback. The general evaluator, if they're doing their job right, is going to evaluate the evaluators, right? So you're not just getting practice, but you're also getting feedback so that you can get better as an evaluator. Also, resources like LaTaunya mentioned, Pathways, in particular, the Pathways project evaluation forums, actually reading not just the front page, but all the criteria, all the detailed guidance for what's the difference between a 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5, et cetera. External resources, Lance Miller, a former I shouldn't say former, I don't think we ever say that, a world champion of public speaking from like 2005 or earlier, has an evaluation tips card. And I can provide John with the link so he can send it out to everyone or put it in chat. That kind of resource, other resources, training sessions like this one. And in the past 12 years that I've been a Toastmaster, there have been many opportunities for training sessions, to attend training sessions specific to evaluating. And I remember one in particular very vividly. And John's smiling because I've told him about this. So it was during a District 18 conference. It was a training session on how to give a good evaluation. And the most important takeaway from that training session that I really didn't understand until then and really took to heart is that the purpose of a speech evaluation is to motivate the speaker to give their next speech. A light bulb went off for me when I heard that. And then the trainer went on to explain how you do that. And he said, find the good in the speech and praise it, frame the opportunities for improvement, and frame them in a kind and helpful way, and limit how many improvements you discuss to preserve the speaker's self-esteem. And this was a really important lesson for me because with an engineering background, I like to be very precise and accurate and complete. That is not the goal of a speech evaluation. So this approach works, I have found, for evaluations in Toastmasters, evaluations in the corporate world, at work, and even in home life. The way I provide criticism to my husband or helpful suggestions has truly changed based on this mindset change. And I mentioned Lance Miller, his evaluation tips card. One of the things it says is, it is more important to find what is right than what is wrong. So the one little other fact about that training session that I remember from so many years ago, is pre-COVID, so it was at least 6 years ago, is that the trainer of that session was John Comberiate.
Thank you, Beth. The check is in the mail. I appreciate that. No, those are wonderful suggestions, wonderful tips, good perspective. Maureen, do you have anything to add?
I think I'll just add two things. I think the one difference between the club speech and the contest speech for me is that ability to connect with the speaker ahead of time and understand what they're working on, so that you can maybe give feedback that resonates a bit more with them. But actually, one piece of advice that got me thinking very differently about evaluations and gave me maybe a little bit more confidence when I was doing them and watching people do them is that the evaluations are for the speaker and the audience. So everybody should be able to improve by hearing the evaluation. So then it kind of changed the way I framed what I was pulling out of the speech and the way I was giving the evaluation speech made it feel a little bit more natural to me.
Fantastic. Yeah, I mean, that is one of the biggest benefits of evaluations is it's not just the speaker who improves, it's everybody hearing the effective evaluation could then apply it to themselves as well. Can you tell us a little bit about your actual process? So for example, while the speaker is speaking, what kind of notes are you taking? When you've collected all of your notes, you're going to begin to write your evaluation. Is there anything that you do to kind of set the stage to frame your evaluation? Are there any procedures while you're giving it where you're looking at maybe the timing lights to see, how you structure or break up the feedback? How does that work for you in your process?
I can jump in on this one, and I never look at the timer lights. That's a really good idea. So I'll have to do that next time. But actually, I found, I guess maybe 5 or 6 months ago, Kyle Murtaugh's method. So I know he had won a couple speech contests in evaluation, but he uses the method of coming up with a hook and then giving 3 things that work really well, and then 2 points, one focused on content, one focused on delivery, and then wrapping it up in a couple of bullet points. And actually, I've used that in the contest, and I'm using it in the club level because it feels very natural to me, and in some way that maybe the typical sandwich didn't feel as natural to me. And so when the speech is being given, I actually fold my paper and I take the top part and I put notes about just one thing that really resonated with me. Maybe it was an image they used, maybe it was a phrase they used, what hooked me into the speech. And then as they're speaking, I'll put together from a perspective of what they do well, a couple of bullet points that resonate, and then I'll use the other side to put detail, like specific example of that. And then at the bottom part, I'll put the areas where they could consider for improving, and I'll usually mark like a D for delivery, a C for content. And then when it comes time to pull it together, I flip the paper over and then just neaten up my notes. I find if I write out too much, I have a little bit more delivery challenges, so I try to keep it tight to bullet points with a couple words in between.
And then how do you convert that note-taking into the actual delivery when you're then giving the evaluation?
So I use the bullet points and just as the feedback, open up with that hook and try to create a story around what drew me in. So for example, in the District 18 evaluation contest, what really struck me was an image the speaker used. And they referenced the way a child looks when they're moving, and it's a very unique way. And kind of, she said something about holding a child's hand, and it made me think of my daughter. That's what pulled me into the speech. And so I used that as a lead for my evaluation. And then from there, I go into the 3 things I did well, the 2 points of feedback, and then very quickly recap it in bullet point fashion.
Fantastic. Beth or LaTaunya?
Okay, I'll jump in. I think Beth gave me the hand to do that. So one of the things I try to do immediately when listening to the model speaker is to ascertain what type of speech it is. And usually it can fall into 2 or 3 categories: humorous, motivational, or informative. And I will say that the district conference was the first time it was not a humorous speech. So everything leading up to that was humorous. I was expecting it to be humorous, but I was pleasantly surprised that it wasn't. So once I have a sense of what type of speech it is, I try to focus on, throughout listening, if they have achieved what I think was the purpose of that speech. Was it to make us laugh? Was it to teach us something? Was it to inspire us in some type of way? And along those lines, when I'm thinking about what it is that I want to comment on, I'm thinking about, how did the person make me feel? Did I feel connected to them? Did I feel that they were authentic? Did I feel that they were sincere? Did I feel that they were vulnerable? And how did they appear as well while they were on stage? Did they look confident? Did they use the stage? Did they use gestures, right? So I think for the most part, my comments, whether they're recommendations or things that I'm complimenting them on, it's really based around how they appeared to me and how they made me felt. And if I'm not too nervous, I also try to include if they achieve what I believe the objective of the speech was. I take a similar model in terms of how I organize my notes, as Maureen explained. But as I have progressed through the process, I've come up with a general type of way that I like to approach the evaluations, particularly in a contest setting. Now, when I did my first evaluation at the club level, I opened up with the standard, greetings, Toastmasters and esteemed speaker. And there's nothing wrong with that, but I like to add a little bit of spice to it. So when I can, I like to open up with a quote. So I love quotes anyway. And to the extent possible, I like to include a quote in the evaluation. For example, at my club, the person gave a humorous speech, and I started off with something like, humor is the best medicine, and our speaker gave us our dose today. Again, if nerves don't overcome me, I like to do that. And of course, that assumes you know what the nature of the speech is. But just to sum it all up for me, I really try to hone in, number one, what type of speech is this? What likely is the intent of this speech? And how did I feel? How did they make me feel while they were speaking? And how did they appear as they were speaking? And I use that as a starting point for building my evaluation.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Beth.
Yes. So I've already learned something new from both Maureen and LaTaunya. So I thank you both for that. And even after, winning first place this year, I know that I have room for improvement, more to learn. So I will never stop attending training sessions like this, whether I'm speaking or just attending. I scribble notes. So beforehand, as I believe Maureen mentioned, I do check in with the speaker. So if it's for a club meeting, I try to always make a point. Now, sometimes it's at the last minute at the beginning, like right before the meeting starts, but preferably I remember to do it at least a day or more before the meeting. And that's because I got that advice or read it somewhere. It might have even been in a Pathways or the old Competent Communicator manual that you should check with the speaker to see if there's anything in particular they want you to look for. So they might be trying to break a bad habit like swaying or something like that, or they might be developing new skill set like establishing better eye contact. So it might be something above and beyond the project requirements. And so I always check in and I say, is there anything specific you want me to watch for other than the project requirements? And then I familiarize myself with the project requirements on the evaluation form. And for a contest, you can't do that. And I never thought to use LaTaunya's method of, well, does this sound like it's motivational or informational? And then try to give my feedback from that lens. So that's a great approach. I just listen very carefully and apply, as I think both LaTaunya and Maureen said, the sort of the basics of speaking, right? The content and the performative aspects. And then during the speech, I'm scribbling notes, and they are completely freeform. I scribble whatever I think could be important before I know whether it is or not. And I do, in real time, as I'm scribbling something, we'll put a plus sign or a minus sign in a circle next to anything that I think this is a strength, this is something that could be improved. And then when I'm done, and at our club, we have a break between the speeches and table topics, and we put it there. We moved it there after years ago. It wasn't there to make sure that evaluators had time to get their thoughts together before we had to give our evaluations. During that period, or if it's in a contest situation, I then go through all the pluses and minuses and all the scribbles. And if I have time, I might write a new bulleted list. But usually what I end up doing is numbering it. I'll talk about this first, 1, 2, A, B, C, and then I find out, oh, I wanted to talk about something before 1, and I make it 0. So I get creative when I have to. And then I look at my notes and I just find those numbers and where they're arrows to the pluses and the minuses. And the other important thing is I decide how I'm going to begin and how I'm going to end. And I love that LaTaunya likes to do a quote. I decide how I'm going to begin and how I'm going to end because, again, common I think it's common, Toastmasters wisdom is that for writing any kind of speech, it doesn't matter if it's an evaluation speech, memorize your opening and your closing so you can open with impact, open with confidence and close with impact. And so I have my scribbles. I decide how am I going to start this and how am I going to close it? And then I follow my scribbles. And between competition seasons that were many years apart, I got lazy and I got relying on my notes. And then when competition season started last fall, I said, I've got to remember how to relearn how to do this without notes. So it took a lot of effort, and also to come in under time, because watching that timer, I try, but that's my process.
I love that. Open with confidence, close with impact. Wow, that is fantastic. LaTaunya, did you have more you wanted to add?
Yes, Beth reminded me of something that I began doing towards the latter part of the contest cycle. In addition to notes, what I began to use was I create a certain, like a legend of things that attach to the notes that I write down. So similar to Beth, I'm kind of free form and I'm writing down things that are catching me in the moment, and I might be able to fold into the speech. But if it's something that's related to vocal variety, I'll put VV next to it. If it's body language, I'll put BL next to it. So anything that it make it easier and quicker for me to pinpoint what it is I want to focus on during those 5 minutes. So for me, creating that legend was really helpful for that reason. And also I can't understand my own writing, so it really forces me to, at least hone in that way.
So there's one thing I want to really emphasize that all three of them mentioned, and that is that their feedback is entirely customized to the actual presentation of the speaker. They don't just have a set rubric that they're just checking boxes. They are actually observing the speaker and highlighting the things that they do well or the opportunities based on the specifics of that speech. So I feel like a lot of people have kind of a template that they use, and in some ways that goes against providing an effective evaluation because maybe you're highlighting things that you shouldn't be highlighting. So let's talk about that. Well, let me throw you a little tough question here. What do you do when you get an excellent speaker? Because I've seen this happen many, many times, right? Somebody gets up, they give a fantastic speech, and then somebody gets up to give an evaluation and they say, that was a great speech. You did all these things well. I can't think of any feedback for you. And I can tell you, as a person who's received that evaluation before, it's actually very demotivating, because when I hear that, it's like, well, I guess I don't need to try that hard because this person can't tell the difference of if I could be better or not anyway. So what do you do? How do you find a way to give feedback even to people who you'd say, oh, this is an excellent speaker already? LaTaunya?
Oh, I guess because I unmuted myself first, right? Well, I will say I haven't found myself in that type of situation yet, because even with experienced speakers, there are certain types of things that many speakers do, whether it's using more of the stage or maybe more eye contact or audience engagement. However, to answer your question, I thought about that too. And one of the things that I discovered is that maybe you can offer to change the perspective of their story. So if they're talking about something that's personal to them, let's take, for example, the person who did the model speech for, that might not be a good example, but she gave the model speech about her journey through the different hikes and everything like that. And it was mostly from her perspective. I wonder, maybe offer something like, I wonder what it would be like from the perspective of one of the people that she was with, because one of the people had asthma or some other type of health issues and was behind. So maybe she could have shifted her perspective to that person rather than her first person experience, or maybe just offer some other way of addressing or modifying their content so that it offers a variation of what they did exceptionally well, but now they can have another variation of that based on if there's an audience change or if their experiences shift some type of way. So that would be my first guess.
Okay. I mean, that sounds fantastic. Yeah, just shifting things, right? Somebody might be very good at giving a one type of speech, but you can offer them a different perspective or a way of delivering it different. Beth, did you have something?
Yes, thank you. I love that. I love that idea, LaTaunya. For me, I have found that, so let me start by saying it's important to, at a club meeting, when you're giving a pathways evaluation, to evaluate based on the skill set that is appropriate at that level. So for instance, if someone's giving their icebreaker, you probably should not be talking about vocal variety unless it's to praise the fact that they have advanced skill sets, right? They're already using vocal variety. It would not be fair to say, yeah, you could have done better with vocal variety, or I would have liked to have heard more vocal variety. I never say you could have done better with, I don't frame it that way. I'm just getting loose for this training session. It wouldn't be fair because that's not a skill set they were supposed to have learned yet. So that said, when I see someone give a speech that demonstrates an advanced skill compared to whatever level the highest level they've ever completed or the level they currently are on, I might say, to your vocal variety, you're already using it. And I encourage you to keep exploring that. It was great. And you could, to stretch yourself, try to even do more tone changes or more pauses or whatever. If I notice advanced skills, I might encourage them to continue to develop those advanced skills. So that's a very niche situation where the speech is perfect, can't find anything wrong with it. However, they're supposed to be at one level and they're operating at a higher level. And I encourage them to continue that growth and do even more of it. And actually that can work for anybody. Your gestures were wonderful. You could even try to do them even bigger than you did them because it can never be too big. Just like on movie screens, they tell the actors to make your gestures really big. So you can probably always challenge them to do more of whatever good stuff they're already doing.
Fantastic. I like that you're highlighting that too, that it's kind of like you're above grade level here, right? Like you're really, because most people don't necessarily know that. They don't really have an objective view of where they stand. So to give them that feedback gives them a better insight about themselves as well. Maureen, did you have any thoughts?
Both Beth and LaTaunya stated really great points, far more eloquently than I probably would have if I jumped in right away. I'll just add that is a terrifying place to be when you're supposed to give an evaluation speech and you're sitting there at the end of the 6.5 minutes and your paper is full of the good things on one side and you're like, okay, what do I do now? So just take your breath. And then I love the way that both of you framed your approaches.
Beth, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yes, I just wanted to add it can be pretty challenging to evaluate a speech where you feel like there was just nothing that could be, it was just so great. There's nothing that could be better. It's almost not quite as challenging to have a disaster train wreck of a speech that you have to evaluate because there's so much wrong with it from the content to the structure and the performative elements that you don't even know where to start. It's not as challenging because the strategy is pick something that if they change it, it will make a big impact. It won't make it all better, but pick something, one or two things, no more than two. So that's hard too. It's definitely harder to evaluate something that just feels so good and you're so impressed by. That's the harder situation.
Beth kind of anticipated my next question, but I do want to just highlight, this isn't fair to you, LaTaunya, because you haven't had the opportunity, but both Beth and Maureen recently gave me evaluations on speeches that I gave, and both of them gave excellent feedback. And as a speaker who's given a lot of speeches, in my self-evaluation, I knew that I had done some things that I could have done better. And I will give them both credit that they both highlighted the things that I already anticipated. And it was very nice to hear their feedback and that validation because they didn't just say, oh, you did everything great. Because I would have been very skeptical of their evaluation in knowing that I had already self-evaluated what I could have done better. So sometimes, again, the speaker, especially if they're an advanced speaker, knows ways that they could improve, and your feedback can really motivate them and highlight that for them so they actually take the effort to improve in those things. So my next question was, what do you do when you're evaluating a train wreck speech? Just something that just, ooh, like it was hard to watch. You just sat there, you saw it happening. There's a lot of work that needs to be done. What do you do? How do you approach it? Beth gave a great starting point there. Do you, LaTaunya or Maureen, do you have other thoughts too?
I'll try to take a stab at this. I think the first thing is to remember that above all else, evaluations are supposed to be encouraging. So regardless of how poorly someone may or may not have performed, there's always something that you could probably motivate them to try again. So what I would probably do, fortunately, I haven't had one of these experiences either, but I would say something like maybe, it took a lot of courage for you to come up here, and I applaud you for that. And you persevered, and it was clear that, you might have not had the level of confidence that you wanted, but you will definitely get there if you keep doing what you did today. And I might just pick a smaller thing for them to improve upon, like maybe pacing or pausing or something like that. But if nothing else, if a person actually goes up on stage and gets through it, regardless of how much they might have stumbled along the way, they did it, they finished it, and they now have that in their biological footprint as something that can keep them going forward again.
Fantastic. Maureen, did you have anything you wanted to add?
I think it really depends if I can tease out why. So if it's, sometimes someone's stepping up and maybe they haven't had a lot of opportunity, whether they didn't get a lot of notice or they, life happens and maybe they didn't get a chance to practice, they're just pulling it together. And that's a very different than maybe someone who put together and, constructed their speech in a way that the foundation needs a lot of work. So the way I'd approach it might be a little bit different in terms of, what I pulled out, but I'd still echo, I think what's been said already is pick one, maybe two things, level it appropriately to that person. And then there have been a couple cases where if I've had some additional thoughts, I might connect with that person at the end of the meeting and try to ask some questions as opposed to delivering feedback in front of everybody if I thought that they might be receptive to that. But in the evaluation itself, keep it tight to those one or two things.
Fantastic. Yeah, that's a good point too, right? When you're giving an evaluation, you're giving it publicly in front of, people that this person might be trying to impress, might be trying to build relationships with. You don't necessarily want to give them feedback that's going to hurt those relationships and their perception of themselves as well. Now, you're all excellent evaluators. Is there a speech that you've seen or a speaker that you've seen that you feel is fantastic, that really motivated you, that really, you have a hard time dreaming up anything that you would even say for feedback, or, it's somebody that inspires you as a kind of as a speaker or speech deliverer, someone that your evaluation, you just say, wow, they're doing it all well. They're really a master at their craft.
I have a few.
Okay.
So when you asked, how do we handle an evaluation for someone where we feel like they've already done it perfectly? I immediately thought, have there been any like that? And what immediately came to mind was Ramona J. Smith's World Championship of Public Speaking winning speech. In my club, in the lean years around COVID, when we weren't having a lot of people sign up for speeches, we would fill the empty speech slots, at least one of them per meeting, with let's watch a video. And sometimes TED Talks, but usually a past world champion of public speaking speech. And then we would do a round robin evaluation. And almost every time I could find at least something that I thought they could have done better, because even world champions can do better, right? When I watched Ramona's speech again, still standing recently, right before the district conference, because she was the keynote speaker there, I watched it and I was like, wow, I can't think of anything I would do better. It blew me away. I've always been a huge fan of Aaron Beverly. He is a master storyteller. He won in 2022, I think. He was second place the year before. And I don't know, he was in at least the semifinals another year. There was one year where the title of his speech was more than 50 words. He is a master storyteller, and he has posted some videos that do self-critiques on his own work, which is really fascinating to watch, because if you can't find what he did wrong, he knows what he did wrong, just like you were saying, John, about yourself, right? So those are just two people who come to mind right off the bat, Aaron Beverly and Ramona J. Smith.
And a quick plug, Aaron Beverly will be the speaker at the GNET 70th anniversary in early June. If you don't know about it, check the newsletter. Check it out. LaTaunya, Maureen, anyone come to mind for you?
I mean, mine is a little bit more out there. I've always admired Oprah Winfrey. So if there's a person who I want to be like in terms of speaking skills, it's her. You know, she's kind of like my role model in that regard. And her net worth too.
That part never hurts.
Did she say network or net worth?
Probably
Net
could go
worth,
either way,
but network is a part of it too.
Yeah. Maureen, did you have anyone that comes to mind?
I'll echo what Beth said. I mean, those two particular champions resonate with me, but at some point in contest season, I went down a rabbit hole watching a compilation of champion speaker videos and was just in awe. Beth, I would have loved to have been in those sessions where you guys were critiquing them, because I had trouble. They really resonated with me, and it showed me what could be achievable with the learning through the program. So I'll meet you that one.
I'll say for myself, if you've never seen it, Dana Jaya's speech, I see something in you. He's also a world champion.
He's number 3 on my list.
Oh, that one I will go back and watch periodically, just because it is such an amazing speech.
To double click that, do you know that speech was in 2014, and to this day people reference "I see something in you" in the Toastmasters circles, and people who have seen that speech will know what they're referring to, from 2014.
Yeah, you talk about impact. So now to flip this to the evaluation side, do you remember seeing an evaluation that had an impact on you, whether it was of your own speech or if it was for somebody else's speech? And if you could highlight for us, what was it about that evaluation that made it stand out?
All right, I have a quick one. It's just repeating what I said before. Annalee Weber. It was so long ago. It was 2015. So we're talking 10 years that I don't remember any of the specifics. I don't remember, Maya Angelou said, people remember what you said and what you did, but will forget what you said and did, but they'll always remember how you made them feel. I don't remember exactly what Annalee Weber said during this evaluation, but I remember how I felt. I was in awe. It was the tips that the feedback she gave was fantastic, and the way she gave it, just the careful, thoughtful, and helpful way she gave that feedback, it blew me away. I was like, wow, that was amazing. I learned so much just from that one evaluation. I can't wait to hear more from her. So again, I don't remember any of the details, just how it made me feel, and I was feeling in awe.
And for people who are not aware of who Annalee Weber is, she's a past international director, and she phenomenal leader. And yeah, I don't know that I ever saw her give an evaluation, but I can picture, just knowing her, how she would have given one, and I can see how that would be very impactful on the speaker as well as the audience. LaTaunya or Maureen?
I'll just say, as I mentioned before, when I first visited the club, Crofton Professional Toastmasters, I saw a really impressive evaluation. And to Beth's point, it wasn't just what the evaluator said, but it was the energy that was behind it. They were so excited and so happy for the person they were evaluating, because I think this person had progressed over a certain period of time. And in addition to the energy, I also liked how the person gave examples of not only what the speaker did, so they basically imitated what the person did, just in case the person didn't recognize what it was that they did so well, but also when they offered recommendations, they actually demonstrated how they could do that. And I was just really fascinated by that style. And I know some of that is part of the evaluation protocol, if you will, within Toastmasters, but the way this person did it was just so energetic and so sincere. And you can see, I could see that this person was really vested in seeing this speaker succeed.
Fantastic. Yeah, they say a lot of times about coaches, right? That a coach can get the best out of their players because the players know that as hard as they're being on them, the coach loves them more. So if you can express that in your evaluation, a true, genuine desire for the improvement of the person you're evaluating, you'll move them to take good action. Maureen, did you have something you wanted to add?
I'll double down on the importance of an example. So I distinctly remember the first time I got a Toastmasters evaluation that gave me an example. It illustrated what they were talking about, because when you're receiving the feedback, you'll hear things you agree with, and you might hear things you don't agree with or you don't understand. And having that example makes it real. And even if the way that it is delivered isn't framed, sometimes when they ask the question, like, hey, maybe with this example, this is not going to work for me, but if I turn the question around and get at the heart of the feedback, I can change this. And I do distinctly remember that moment after getting a couple of evaluations where they were very general. To get that specificity was very, very helpful, and really felt like I had a step forward from that speech.
Fantastic. So that kind of brings me to my next thought here, which is, oh, Beth, did you have something you wanted to add to that?
As the recipient of evaluations, when they say you didn't talk about XYZ, and your first instinct, right, if you did talk about it, is to think, yes, I did. What you have to do is, as the speaker, not the evaluator, receiving evaluation, is think, why is it that they think that I didn't talk about XYZ when I did? So Maureen hit on something really important there on how to use evaluation.
So Beth always anticipates my next question, which was, as a speaker then, and now, you're excellent evaluators. So when you receive an evaluation on your own speeches, what do you do to make sure that you actually get the benefit of the feedback that you receive? Marie?
I would have said what Beth said. But I will say, then my next step is, and contest season was a great opportunity for this, then going back after I've given the speech again and made some changes and saying, hey, I got this feedback. How did this land? Did you feel this, or did this change make sense to you? And constantly stress testing those adjustments.
Yeah, I'm going to do what Beth said as well. Because I agree, Beth hit it right on the head. If I said something, or if I did something and the perception of my evaluator is that I didn't, then I need to do it differently, and I need to do it bolder or more clearly, or whatever the case is. And then also, being the recipient of feedback, I think naturally falls into how you evaluate, because something else I think about when I'm evaluating is what would I want to hear, and how would I want to hear it. And I want to make sure that whenever I'm giving something that might be received as negative, even though we try our best not to cast it in that way, say it in a way that would make me receive it in a way that I can do something with it and digest it and use it moving forward.
Credit where credit's due. What I said was because of what Maureen said. And if she hadn't beaten me to the unmute button, I would have said what Maureen said. So credit where credit's due. And I love the additional considerations that LaTaunya just added.
I'll give you guys credit as well, too, because you have me thinking a lot of times when I give speeches, I give a speech one time and I don't repeat my speeches. But the reality, right, one of the benefits of doing a contest is that you give a speech over and over and over again, and it forces you to refine it and improve it and really develop the skills around it that make it emphasize and stick to your audience and connect to your audience. So that challenges me to, in the future, compete in contests. What have you gotten kind of from the journey that you went on this year in the evaluation contests? how did that help you as you evaluate or help you as a speaker kind of going through this process?
I'll say it gave me some confidence. The imposter syndrome is real when you step up and you wonder, am I going to pull out something that resonates, that the speaker finds helpful, the audience finds helpful? And going through that process in the contest format really helped build my confidence doing that.
I will say it really pushed me outside of my comfort zone. And that, of course, is where growth is. So, for example, when I'm illustrating to a speaker, hey, use more of the stage, which I never do, by the way. I never use the stage. But when I'm recommending that someone use more of the stage and I'm actually illustrating using more of the stage, that is uncomfortable for me, but that's something I need to get comfortable doing. So it really stretched me in that way. And I can't be more grateful for the process because of that.
That's it.
Well, it's stage time, right? It's a speech. It's a 2 to 3 minute speech, but it's still a speech. So going through the contest season, I signed up for every club that I could do an evaluator role for. I did it because I knew I needed as much practice as possible before competing, and all through the different levels, club and up. And my two challenges were I'd gotten lazy and was relying on notes all the time. And I wanted to get away from that. So I started cutting myself off from notes, and I said, let's see what happens. And over time, I got more confident with that. And my other challenge was I would consistently go over 3 minutes 30. When you're in a contest, you don't go over 3 minutes 30 or else you DQ, right? So I was very mindful of how many points I wanted to make and how well they came together so I wouldn't have to pause and think about, well, what's the next point? That there was a framework holding them together so I could just deliver them. And it really practicing that technique so I could remember it and come in on time. And I'll tell you, maybe a few weeks before the district level contest, I did a club evaluation and came in at like 329. I was like, uh-oh, I got to reel it in a little bit more. So those were the two skills that I really worked on, and just repetition and focus. And it's like table topics, you want to convey something important, find a way to do it in 2:30.
We've got a few minutes left, so I'm going to say if you have a question, put it in the chat. While I give people a little bit of time to go ahead and put their questions in, have you noticed kind of in this process a shift in your ability to put together your evaluations tighter, quicker, more focused from kind of the repetitions and the process that you just went through?
Yeah. So getting off of notes, sometimes I would want to give a specific example of when you told the story about XYZ, I was confused or whatever. And I remember in one of the last evaluations I gave before the district level at the club, before the district level contest, I had written down 3 examples of something, and I couldn't remember one of them while I was giving my evaluation speech. And, the advice that we often hear and give for regular speeches, and it applies to evaluation speeches, is no one knows what's in your script. So if you forget something, it doesn't matter. They didn't know it was supposed to be there, right? Well, I said I had 3 examples, and I gave 2, and I said, I can't remember the third one. And I said, but you know what? That just goes to show it wasn't a compelling example, or else I would remember it. So I was rather pleased with myself for turning that around. And now I know I have another tool in my toolbox. It's like when I do table topics contests or just table topics, and they ask that superlative, what's your favorite or what's your best? I live in fear of superlatives. I don't know. And finally, I learned I don't have to know. I can say, I don't have a favorite. I love them all, or I hate them all, right? It's that tool in your tool belt. And when I did that, I was like, okay, now I know how to address if I forget something and I've already committed to telling them 3 things and I've forgotten the third, I know what to say about why I forgot the third.
Fantastic. LaTaunya, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yes. To be honest, I forgot your question, but it was something along the lines of what we've learned. Okay. I just want to make sure. So I would say going through this evaluation contest process, it has really improved my listening skills, my active listening skills. And I don't think that would have happened absent my participation in this process. And it's also helped me to be able to synthesize things very quickly, because obviously everything is happening in a rapid fire pace. You only have 5 minutes. I swear it seems like only 2 minutes, but they say it's 5 minutes, and then you have a finite period of time to give your speech. So it's really improved my active listening skills, and I think that's going to go a long way, certainly within Toastmasters, but even beyond.
Fantastic.
To echo those points, and just it forced me to cut out the temptation to summarize too much of the speech other than that key hook or main points, and keep what I needed to say really tight to avoid getting into that red light period.
I feel like that's the temptation for a lot of people, right? When you don't know what kind of feedback to give, you just reiterate what the person said rather than actually evaluating what they said. One of the questions that we got is, what advice would you give to evaluators who are more inexperienced speakers than the speaker that they're evaluating? So they have new members in their club who worry that they won't know what kind of feedback to give.
Fresh perspectives are always useful, and you'll probably surprise yourself. Do it. Just do it. You'll be fine.
So when you say that, you just mean saying what that person saw from the speaker, through their eyes.
Right. They're less experienced, so or maybe inexperienced, and so they will have a different lens, a different perspective from which to evaluate, and can be valuable.
Fantastic. Yes, that's an absolutely true point. LaTaunya, did you have something?
I'll just add that, going back to something I said in the beginning, Pathways provides a lot of good information, and in level 1, it has an evaluation and feedback section. So if you are inexperienced, either as a Toastmaster or as a speaker in general, just use that as a guide. You can always talk about how is their body language, how is their vocal variety, how is their stage use. You don't have to be experienced to be able to observe these things. So I think the more that you can really understand those fundamentals that are in level 1, you'll be able to provide some form of feedback regardless of your experience level.
Fantastic.
I'd agree. I think, whether someone is on their first pathway or their fourth pathway, the project has things to work on. And I think, as I said earlier, everyone is always working on something, and bringing that home to a new member who may be on their first or second speech might help level that feeling a little bit.
I have one little PS. I read somewhere that a tip to give feedback with eye language. I notice, not we, the audience, I'm speaking for the audience, I. And so you're giving your own opinion. And guess what? Nobody can say your opinion is wrong. It's your opinion. So especially if you're nervous about giving an evaluation because you've never done it before, you've only done it a couple times, remember, you're giving your opinion, and that counts.
LaTaunya, did you want to add something to that?
Yes, thank you. Something that I wanted to add in terms of what I've learned, or a skill that I've continued to improve, is just empathetic language. So when you're giving recommendations, if one may be prone to say, well, I think you can improve this, or it would be better if you do that. But through Toastmasters and just listening to other evaluators, you can use softer language. Like, I wonder if you would consider, or imagine how the impact might be if you did this. So it helps you to be more empathetic in your recommendations, because even though you're offering an area of improvement, the way that you say it can make a difference in whether or not it's received or not.
I fully agree. There have been many situations where I kind of cringe sometimes when you hear the way the feedback is delivered. It's kind of like the ah counter, right? It's not to make somebody embarrassed. It's really, you're creating an awareness. And I think we want to frame it the right way. So we got one more question, and this comes from someone. They're saying, do you have any tips for overcoming extreme anxiety during public speaking? And I know for Maureen, since you're in my club, I know I just assigned you as a mentor for someone who is dealing with extreme anxiety during public speaking, who just gave one of the best speeches that I've heard in a very long time. what did you do with her to help encourage her through some of her extreme anxiety?
I can't take credit for that. She knocked it out of the park, on her own. But some of the things that we had talked about were, what does improvement look like in that situation? Having lived this, I know improvement doesn't mean next week giving a speech and being fully comfortable and roaming around the stage. It means, okay, maybe my heart didn't beat quite as fast, or I could actually hear instead of hearing my heartbeat in my ears, or I could make eye contact with two people. So it's these incremental little improvements. And then we also talked a little bit after that speech about what is happening inside that this person could feel and the anxiety they were feeling versus what we were seeing outside, which was someone who was very put together and had practiced quite a bit, and trying to bring those two together as a confidence builder, so that they could see, okay, this is how it delivered. Maybe I need to step a little bit more towards this belief.
Fantastic. Beth or LaTaunya, did you have any thoughts on that?
Breathing, power posing, and taking some comfort in the knowledge that there are some celebrities, and I can't, like Adele, boy, there are some really, really big names in the entertainment industry who have admitted that they have extreme glossophobia. So make sure you take some good, deep cleansing breaths. If you have a chance before your speech to do a little bit of power posing, that actually, there's biochemistry behind that. It actually changes what's going on in your brain, and it makes you feel more confident and look more confident. And so that's power posing, and just take comfort in the knowledge that, so I've been a Toastmaster for 12 years. I'm completely comfortable with public speaking in front of very large crowds, but whether the crowd is tiny or huge, but when I sit down after my speech, my hands are going like this. Okay. So my mind thinks I'm fine, but my body obviously thinks otherwise. So, it might never go away, and that's okay.
Fantastic. LaTaunya?
I'll just quickly add, in addition to what Maureen and Beth both said, the deep breathing, also repetition, practicing. I think even Toastmasters says, maybe start practicing with a small group of friends, and then you get confidence and comfortable doing that. And then you can, through repetition, do that in front of people you aren't as familiar with, and then you'll just build up that confidence.
Yes. All right, so we've run out of time, and I just again want to thank all three of our panelists. This was phenomenal, phenomenal. Thank you for so much wonderful information, for perspective, for sharing your experience, and just helping everybody to benefit here. If we could all just come off mute quickly and just give them a round of applause. I really do appreciate your time, your effort, and your expertise.
And thank you, John.
Yeah, thank you, John.
Absolutely. This has been an absolute pleasure to get to talk to you and have this conversation. And I think will be a wonderful resource for all the districts. So thank you again so much. We greatly appreciate it. And we're out of time, but if you want to reach out, I'm sure they are probably willing to talk to you if you have additional questions. I would highly encourage everyone here, if you have a chance, come to Crofton Toastmasters, come to Frederick Toastmasters, come to Columbia Toastmasters, see them in action here, and you will, I'm sure, benefit as a speaker and as an evaluator as well. Thank you all again very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you.